Hello, welcome to What She's Thinking. I'm Greg Schwartz, your dating coach. Men like you have sent in questions about dating and sex. I have a group of women here that are going to answer your questions, and I'll help clarify their answers so you hear exactly what these women want and why. Send me your questions at makeonlinedatingfun.com/questions. And remember, subscribe so you can hear all of the episodes. Now, ladies, please introduce yourselves.
I have a sense of adventure and I love trying new things. And while I'm mostly lighthearted and fun, I also enjoy a genuine, deep conversation. I'm 26 and I grew up in Los Angeles, but I moved around a lot. So I'm just generally looking for a life partner that I can jive with. When I first entered the dating scene, I was
If a guy isn't interested in you, how would you like him to tell you that?
Took a year-long gap to
Literally
meet new
just
people,
tell me.
and now I'm in a
Totally
serious
agree.
relationship again.
I mean,
Hello, I'm Janey.
I think in this day and age, we meet so many people
grew up
and we
in
have
South
so many
America,
options. We don't want to waste our time. We don't want to waste your time.
fun,
So
silly,
the second
playful,
you're not
and
feeling
curious,
it, please tell me.
total
I would
closet
be so,
nerd.
I mean,
and
not to say I
I
would
like
be
a
happy,
guy who
but
is
I would
playful
be
and can
grateful
sass me
for the
back.
time saved. When I'm dating, I
totally
like to
agree.
date
I actually
a
had
bunch
an
of different people.
experience a few
And
months
then
ago. It was
when I find someone that I
was
feel
so
like I really click
grateful
with,
that he
then
ended
I'll
things with
enter
me
a
because I actually
monogamous
wanted to end it with
relationship.
him.
I'm looking for
it was
somebody
beautiful
who
'cause
knows what he wants.
We ended it before anyone was
and
resentful
is ready for the
or
real deal.
frustrated.
And
but
so
can
also
please
has
do
a lot
it
of experience
right when
under his
you
belt.
feel it's coming up.
Hi, my
have
name
a
is Chloe. I'm
conversation,
34 years old.
And
I'm
actually,
originally from the
also,
East
if there's
Coast,
something
Miami and
that
New
is
York.
bothering you, bring
And
it up. Because
I'm
maybe
really
the thing
looking
doesn't
for
need to
someone
end.
who's
if there's something
deeply
to talk
interested
about,
in
'cause
having
you
an
can work on
evolutionary
lots of
relationship.
things.
And what I mean by
Totally.
that is someone
I think
who
that no
wants
one
to
wants
utilize
to be
their
a bad guy,
relationship
and maybe
for
that's
personal
why a lot of
growth,
ghosting
spiritual
happens.
growth,
But when you
emotional
ghost, you
growth,
still send the same
while also
message.
having
It's just
a lot
way
of
more
fun,
passive aggressive
laughing
and
our
way less
butts off,
respectful.
and going on a lot
So
of
much
adventures.
less respectful.
Traveling, I travel
So,
a ton.
on the flip side of that,
and is
how can we tell if
super
you're not
affectionate.
interested in us?
And really
I feel like
interested
I'm a pretty straightforward
in
person, so I'll let you
deeply
know.
connecting, talking
Same.
about the things that are
Well,
most
that was easy,
important
guys.
to human
She'll tell you.
beings. I'm a
Do
life
you care
coach
how
and I
much the
teach
guy
leadership at
makes?
Stanford.
What if he makes
so,
less than you?
like,
Does that make him
personal
less
growth,
attractive?
personal development,
For me,
really
it
digging
doesn't
into what
affect
makes
me
humans
if he
happy
makes less than me,
and
or that doesn't make
fulfilled
him
and
seem less
connected
attractive.
is the
but
core
it
of my
can
whole
be an
life.
inhibitor
I
with a
want a partner in
relationship if
crime
he
for
can't
that
afford to do things
exploration.
that I want to do. Of course, I'm super happy to help share in any wealth that I have, but I also don't want to make someone feel emasculated if I'm taking care of things. So just making sure that we can find a balance with that. And I think as well, having an open conversation when things are tough rather than hiding your financial status can be really helpful in a relationship.
It matters to me. I do want the guy I'm with to earn as much as I do, if not more than I do. But I think a lot of that has to do with where they are in life. So, for instance, if you're like if you're not doing that well financially, is it because you're still a student or like you're working at a startup? And have you only ever worked at startups and jumped from startup to startup? Like I mentioned earlier, stability is really important to me and security. And so that's a major thing in what I look for. And I also just really like to travel and go on adventures and do fun things. So I want my partner to be able to do those things with me.
I feel similarly to Zoe where it doesn't matter to me if you make less than me, but it does matter to me that you can do the things I want to do. I travel a lot. I like to eat really good food. I like to not feel stressed about money. So to me, the bigger impact is, can you afford to live a relatively comfortable lifestyle? We don't have to fly first class all the time. But what I look for is, can you support yourself comfortably and not wanting money to be this looming stress in the relationship?
Totally. And also to build off of that, it's not like I have to jet set and go somewhere new every single weekend. But if we can't afford to do something super fun together, can we both be creative and work together to find other solutions that we can do?
Who pays on the first date? What do you prefer?
Maybe I'm a little more traditional or believe in more traditional gender roles. But I like it when the guy pays. I will offer to pay, but I really like it when he pays.
I feel very similarly to Janey. I'm happy to pay, and I always offer to pay. And there's something sweet when the guy offers to pay on the first date. And if you don't, I'll still go on a second date with you. It feels like a sweet gesture, like chivalry is still alive.
Yeah, I agree with Chloe and Janey in some respects. I think that it's super thoughtful if you offer to pay. I won't be mad if you ask me to split, and I'm happy to do that as well. But someone just assuming anything, I think, is a large issue, whether it has to do with paying for your first date or anything else in your relationship.
Yeah.
What behaviors in your partner help you be open and clear with your sexual requests?
When a guy isn't grossed out by bodies, like I've definitely dated men who find like bodies a little more like, oh, they're not as comfortable. And it's really obvious to me when a man is comfortable with a body. And when they are, I'm much more likely to be clear with my requests because I feel like there's an openness on his part. So just to sum that up, that there's an openness. There's like, you're not going to react like, ew, or oh. And maybe like openness, curiosity, and a gentleness around it, and not holding it too seriously. So openness, curiosity, and like lighthearted, but not like making fun of me. To be clear, like a gentleness, and we can laugh about things.
I really like it when a guy compliments my body. It's not easy to be vulnerable and naked, so I like it when a guy does that. And
yes.
I also really like it when he encourages me. I, for example, used to be self-conscious of the fact that I have a small chest or somewhat small chest. And I dated this guy and I took off my shirt and he's like, oh my goodness, you're perfect. Like, this is better than I ever imagined. Or something like that. Boobs.
That's most of our reaction, you know.
I know. And I was like, that is such a sweet reaction. Or, you know, if he's like, you taste really nice or you smell really nice or tell me what it is I can do. Like, are you liking this? Are you enjoying this? So just being like really encouraging and accepting makes me open up.
Accepting's getting nods all around.
Yeah, I agree. It seems like there's a running theme with all of our responses, which is just if you don't know what's up, ask us and be open about it. And I think that a guy who shows me in our everyday life that he is thoughtful and listening to what I'm sharing and doesn't react super strongly to things, I feel more comfortable with him in general, and that also plays out in my sex life.
How does your career or work affect your dating life?
Well, for me, certainly, I move around a whole bunch. Every month I go to a new city, and so it made it a little bit hard to start developing a deeper relationship with someone, but I actually found someone along the way who also travels full time, so it worked out for me. But it was a perfect gap from my serial monogamy, for sure.
It depends on the season because in the summer I end up teaching a lot, so I don't have as much time for a partner. But then during other parts of the year, I have a pretty flexible schedule. So it's actually really important for me to date someone who can take Mondays or Fridays off and likes to do weekend trips. It's not essential. I'm open to someone who has a more like normal 9 to 5, but it's a nice perk. So the bigger takeaway for me to you all is finding someone where you're compatible with the amount of time to spend together. Like, and again, in the conversation, like how much time do you want to spend together? How many nights a week do you want to sleep over? I know personally, if I don't sleep well with the person I'm dating in the same bed, if I have to wake up early the next day, that's an important conversation to have. So I'd say my work really impacts like whether I have sleepovers. I really don't like dating workaholics because, again, quality time is one of my top love languages. So it's important for me that whoever I date has work-life balance, but also is flexible because sometimes I will work like crazy for like I was just teaching a class in Columbia for Stanford for 2 weeks. And so I wasn't available. Like if I had a partner, they'd have to understand that or want to come with me, which would be also fun. So I like flexibility.
So I work in tech, and without getting into too much detail, a lot of my job focuses on sort of seeing like the underbelly of human life. And so I think for me, it's really important to have a partner who is very emotionally intelligent. There are some days that I could be really affected by the work, and or act out in different ways because of it. And it's important to me that my partner understand that. In general, I try not to talk about my work, but sometimes that results in me just holding things in. So I think having a partner who's just really understanding, can read people easily, and is not afraid to sort of dig deep into the weeds about emotions is very important to me.
Oh, I love that, Janey.
Oh, thank you, Chloe.
That's true. Those actually are super good points. And I mean, another piece to my role is that I am in sales, so I do talk to a lot of people every day, and sometimes it can just be really exhausting. So at the end of the workday, sometimes I just need to relax, and it doesn't necessarily mean I'm in a bad mood or trying to be cold toward you if that's the case, but just knowing what might have gone on in my day and just giving me space sometimes to decompress is really helpful.
Does your work stress affect your dating and libido? And if so, what can men do to help you with that?
So for me personally, it doesn't affect my libido. I think my boyfriend and I have a pretty happy sex life. In terms of asking how men can help me or other women want to have sex, I think that approach to the question is a little bit problematic because I think when I'm looking for a partner, I would hope that he wasn't trying to help me for the sake of him getting sex, but more so because he appreciates me as a person and doesn't want me to be stressed out. With that being said, though, I think that maybe men are coming with this question from a place of goodwill, but maybe reframing the question a little bit better just because I think women in general have a lot of pressure put on them, whether it be work or their position in the relationship, like if they're giving enough sex. So if you bring it up that way, it also makes me feel like I'm not good enough as a girlfriend to you as well, rather than sounding like it's coming from a place where you just want to support me.
I think because I mentioned emotional intelligence and connection is so important to me, that can really help with my libido. So even if I come home from a really long day and I'm tired, if you make an effort to really connect with me and understand me and we have a really solid connection and I feel bonded, that'll loosen me right up. And another thing is, even if I'm not in the mood, when guys I've dated have been playful or sort of like assertive in what they want, not in a rapey way, obviously.
Good clarification.
I really like that kind of assertiveness that will get me in the mood.
I feel very similarly to Janey and Zoe, where it's not about the sex. If I feel connected and seen and loved, nothing will affect my libido. Also, like a nice back rub, like having it not be just about the sex. And I feel that way about sex in general. Like one of the biggest annoyances I have about dating is men think it's all about the sex. And what they don't realize that if you give a woman a back massage and scratch her head and like massage her legs, that she will be so turned on that it'll never be an issue that she doesn't want to have sex.
I do have to interrupt you and say that's not even close to reality for most men. And it's actually, honestly, a little bit insulting for a lot of the guys to hear that. So I totally hear you that that's your experience. But definitely a lot of guys are looking at their phones going, what? So I definitely get the perspective that you have on that. And you particularly said that you want to be, I think it was known and felt. Was that the words you used? Mm-hmm. What specific things can your partner do that helps you feel that way?
They can ask questions about how I'm feeling. Oh, how are you feeling? And when I tell them how I'm feeling, they listen and they can respond how they, another thing. And if I'm feeling sad or upset, it's not take it personally. That's a really big libido killer in a relationship is when the woman, or at least in my experience, and I see some of the other women nodding their heads, that if I just share authentically how I'm feeling and it's sadness or fear or anger, like not to take it personally because then it just shuts down the conversation. But if you can remain curious and just say like, oh, why is that? Or what's that like? And just try to keep a running like phrase in your head. Oh, it's not about me. It's not about me. It's not about me. That could help.
And I'm guessing this is also comes under the, I just want to be heard, not fixed.
Yes.
So guys, just as a reminder, this is a great time to ask your lady, do you want help with this or do you just want to be heard, or whatever way you want to phrase that?
Yes, that is a great question. And sometimes I might want help. Like, I love it when my partner wants to strategize about if there's a difficult relationship at work or with a friend, and they listen, and I'm like, oh, what do you think she would want to hear? And other times I just want you to listen.
Could you rate your sex drive compared to the average woman's? And to be clear, this could be, 1 through 10. This could be high, medium, low, whatever you want. Just give us a sense of that.
How do we know? Because we don't date women.
True.
I would say comparing yourself to your girlfriends is probably the easiest way.
I don't know if maybe I just am in a circle of friends that have sex regularly, but I think that maybe on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm kind of like a 7. But I'll ask my boyfriend when I get home.
So it might be easier to actually ask a different question first, because that might help. How often in a week or a month would you like to have sex?
I think it depends on how long we've been dating. In the beginning, like, we will go at it like rabbits. And that's what I like. And then once we are a little more comfortable with each other and the novelty sort of wears off, then maybe every other day, unless he initiates more often than that.
I would say that I agree. I think when I first start relationships, it is more aggressive and kind of slows down later on down the line. But that also has to do with what's going on in my work life, since that does occupy a lot of my day. So there have been times where I've wanted to have sex multiple times in a day. Now it's probably more like every other day, just because we can also find that intimacy hanging out on the couch watching Netflix.
It feels highly variable, just depending on my work life, my schedule. But I'd say on an average, preferably every day, and definitely at least some level of like touch or connection every day. But it doesn't have to be for hours. Honestly, if we're on vacation, multiple times a day.
Anything to add on how you'd rate your sex drive, just sort of based on that?
I'm probably a 7, based on these other ladies who every other day is maybe more normal. I think every day would be great if I'm in a committed relationship. I mean, obviously, if we're not seeing each other every day, that's not going to happen.
Yeah. I think my sex drive sounds about average, so 7. But definitely there has to be physical touch every day. I need that.
How can a man tell if a woman has a high or a low sex drive?
Ask them. How often do you like to have sex?
Yeah, that's pretty solid.
Nice and simple, guys. Just ask.
And honestly, this is sometimes a first date conversation to talk about touch and like intimacy. It's nice to know what you're getting into.
It's actually something I encourage my male clients to talk about on first dates. Not necessarily how much, how often you want to have sex, but what are your languages of love? What are you into? How comfortable are you with touch, if that's a thing for you, or gifts, if that's a thing for you? Whatever it is that is important to you as the guy, ask her about it.
I want to jump in and echo that and +1 that a million times. So I actually dated a guy who did not like physical touch, it turns out. But in the beginning, he was very hands-on and touchy-feely just because of all those hormones, and, we were having sex all the time. And then after we started to get more comfortable with each other, he was like, I actually don't like you leaning on me, or I actually don't really like cuddling. And it would have saved me a lot of heartache and time if we just talked about that right from the beginning before I got invested.
Beyond the first time that you have sex, so, second, beyond, you could even call it like boyfriend-girlfriend status. How do you like your partner to tell you he wants to have sex, that he's excited to have sex with you that night? What can he do that's exciting for you as opposed to just like, I'm horny?
Going back to what we were talking about before around like complimenting, like similarly to how I feel open asking for what I want, like telling me I look beautiful, like stroking my hair, or, passionately making out with me, like really showing your desire to me is like, oh, okay, that sounds fun. Like, just to be open about it. Actually, a long time, many years ago, I dated someone, and we broke up, and then we were talking about things, and he's like, yeah, I wanted to have sex, but I didn't think you wanted to. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I couldn't tell, and I totally wanted to. And so, like, please remember, like, just be so clear. And I think showing through your actions, and it depends on your partner, but if your partner likes touch, most women from that I know, and definitely me, like, I want to be desired. So if I can feel your desire, that's probably one of the biggest turn-ons.
Agreed.
Hundo P.
Sorry?
100%. I just abbreviated it.
I suddenly feel very old.
Sorry.
I didn't get it either.
That makes me feel a little better. All right. How long is your ideal session of intercourse? To be clear, not including the foreplay, but actually, penis in vagina sex. And what's the sort of minimum time that's satisfactory for you, and how much is too long?
I don't think I've ever really timed when I stop feeling good. But there is a point, I think, when you can tell that my physical response just isn't the same, and I'm kind of just in it so that you can finish too. But Again, just if you can sense that she's just not into it anymore, whether she's not making any sounds or just not responsive, ask and see how it's going.
And I think it's hard for me to know because I don't know who sent this in, but I would guess he's probably a little more focused on, am I lasting long enough rather than am I lasting too long? But it is both. So is there a minimum for you that you've really noticed? If it's less than X minutes or X hours, then it's just not good enough?
I think if it's a repeated thing where he demonstrates to me he's very much only interested in his own climax, that would upset me. But of course, there are moments where you just get super excited, or maybe the foreplay was just too awesome. In which case, as long as you're having a good time, I mean, it's a pat on the back for me too.
I wouldn't worry. I mean, for me, length of time doesn't really matter. Foreplay matters. If I'm wet, it matters. When it dries up, then it starts to hurt. But I also can't. I mean, I have a very difficult time orgasming through intercourse. Am I allowed to talk about this?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. All right, sex podcast.
Yes.
So usually I'll need the guy to take care of me in a separate way. And so the actual P in V itself doesn't matter.
I feel similarly to Janey that the time during actual intercourse isn't as important as like the connection, and like if I really love foreplay and touch and the sensuality. What's frustrating is if the guy climaxes and I haven't, and then he's just like done and out for the count, and I'm like, I could go on for another couple hours. So taking breaks is cool too, and sometimes communication is really important. And like I said before, that guy that was like confused about where I was at, if we had just had a simple conversation, he would have realized that I wanted to keep going. Like he sometimes would also think that I didn't want to keep going, but I did. And so even if I wasn't wet anymore, like, okay, get some lube, or like there's ways to work with it. So talking about it, I know people are afraid to talk during sex, but I like go for it. It's actually a really big turn on when a man can talk about sex and ask questions and be like, oh, do you like that? Is there anything else you would like? I just want to pleasure you. That's a really good phrase.
Getting some very big smiles and nods on that. So there's agreement all around. Thank you for listening to What She's Thinking. To help other men find the podcast, please write a review on iTunes. And remember, subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. Finally, to get your questions answered, go to makeonlinedatingfun.com/questions. And I'd love to hear your feedback on the show. So email me, greg@makeonlinedatingfun.com.